Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of teissTalk with me, your host, Jenny Radcliffe, coming to you from location. As you can see, we have got a great show for you today. I want to say welcome, first of all, to our lovely teissTalk audience who accompany us wherever we go, as well as introducing you in a little while to an excellent panel of guests. We are going to be talking today about protecting your key people from their own mistakes, which is a rather controversial title. I have a great panel to discuss that with me. Now, a tumultuous week this week in the world, as well as in security. And we are happy to take questions on the same. Our news item will be looking at the current situation and looking at what we can do to protect ourselves. And we want all of you, as usual, to take part in the chat and put questions, comments and thoughts over in the bar on your right so that we can answer them and so that my panel can answer them. Later, we will be joined by Robert Fleming from our today's sponsor company, Siva. So hello to Robert, as well as Bernard from Vivid Money Island, and he's the CISO of Vivid Money Island, and he has a second name that I don't want to butcher, so I'm going to let him introduce himself to you. You will notice today that I do not have with me my teissTalk mug because I could not fit that in the suitcase for my location at the moment. So you need to show, if you want a teissTalk mug, you need to give us as many comments and questions as possible to fill in that gap. But first, we always have an excellent opening guest for you, and today is no exception. We have friend of the show and associate principal. I'm just going to read this, make sure I get his title right. Associate Principal, Security and Human Risk Management, friend of the show and regular guest, Kyle Hubert. Welcome to the stage.
Hey, good morning.
Morning, Kyle. How are you?
Doing all right.
We're doing all right. And Kyle, you are wearing the Stetson, which is always a plus.
I promised you I would. It's afternoon in Texas, or morning in Texas, afternoon in Britain. And of course, the Stetson is real. I do actually wear it.
You
but
do.
I won't wear it the whole time.
No, but we like you to wear the Stetson, Kyle. We do. And good morning to you over there. So, Kyle, first of all, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, the key thing, your expertise is that security awareness and bringing people along with all of that. And with the situation in the world right now, people are going to be feeling very overloaded, aren't they? Do you want to talk a little bit about how that might be affecting our teams and how they're performing right now?
Absolutely. So a huge part of human risk management, what we're kind of calling security awareness training and education these days, is about meeting people where they are and getting them to understand the message we're trying to impart in such a way that they're able to act on it. And obviously you've noticed that we're in year 3 of the plague and people are chronically fatigued. They're stressed out. They are suffering from the accumulated effects of long-term stress. And as such, when they try to go about their regular business day the way they have been, with multitasking and multi-threading, trying to do a bunch of things at once, on top of all of the complicating factors that the pandemic has brought us, it means people are far more likely to make completely unintentional mistakes. So a lot of the ways that we were trying to empower people to become effective members of the security team, by extension, pre-pandemic, don't work nearly as well during the plague. And if it's all, when I was reading that dark reading article that you sent us before the show, part 5 is what just absolutely did it for me. We can have all the tech senses in the world, but no technology can ever completely replace an aware and engaged human. And that's where right? And I've got a story to relate that I think will help illustrate this.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I mean, just to say, everyone, Kyle is referring to the article that we are going to speak about in depth in our news item. So don't worry about that. We will put a link up in our chat for you. We have a special guest elf today. So the link will go up in the chat shortly when we start talking about it. And there it is right there, so that you can see that link about what we're going to talk about. But Kyle, to what you wanted to talk about, tell us what that's all about.
All right. So regular followers of my American View column on Business Reporter know that I tend to be known for looking at things from a rather weird perspective. I mean, first, American, not British, and let's be honest, Texan, not American. Mm-hmm. So we tend to look at everything from a very skewed perspective, which gives people an opportunity to reconsider and really rethink how they're looking at various security problems. And I wanted to lead with a real story that for once goes against my entire method of normally introducing the topic. Normally, I take something disastrous and try to make it both educational and funny. Mm-hmm. But this is actually a happy story. So I promise, I swear this is a happy story. So back in November, my wife had a near fatal heart attack.
Oh.
See, this is why I put a disclaimer on this up front. Now, here's what happened. Right, she had her symptoms. We recognized her for what it was, rushed her to the A&E. And when she was there, the emergency room doc, that's what we call an A&E over here, said, everything about this is weird. You don't seem to be having the normal symptoms of a heart attack. Well, you have some, but not all. But some of the labs, but not all. And he could not figure out what was going on at first, but he had his suspicions. And he explained them to us, and he wrote it up to pass it on to the cardiac when she was transferred. What she actually had was not a myocardial infarction. It was called a SCAD, a spontaneous coronary artery dissection.
Okay.
And what that meant was, in the artery that leads into the heart, a piece of the lining of the coronary artery had split, and it made a little V-shaped flap of tissue that fell into the path of the blood that made an off-ramp.
Wow.
So the blood into the heart was going between the artery lining and the artery wall, where it's not supposed to be. So it'd be kind of like if someone put a sudden off-ramp and diverted all the traffic off the motorway into services and clogged everything up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing. They're rare, but they do happen to women her age. And if you treat them the way you would treat a normal heart attack, the patient is almost certainly going to die.
Oh, no.
However, exactly. But this is what happened. This is why this is such a good story, and it's all true. Both the cardiac surgeon and the cardiologist and the ER doc had all been to a class recently at the hospital where they had been taught new information about detecting and treating SCADs. And so when they went in to prepare to do a normal stent, what they discovered was the dissection. They immediately pulled up, so we know what this is. We've been shown this. We know the procedure. I got this. And the next day they did heart surgery, and she's not only made a full recovery, she's in better shape now than she was before the event.
Oh, thank goodness.
This is why. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about trying to prevent people from making mistakes. Because if any one of those members of her trauma team had made the mistake of following the normal process, like they've done a million times, she wouldn't have made it. But someone in that hospital, from a clinical awareness standpoint, had realized there was an issue, put together a class, delivered it. Every member of this team had attended, paid very close attention, not only absorbed it, but took personal interest in applying it, right? That's what we want. Well, obviously, it's what I want, all right? I'm pretty sure my wife was in favor of that, too. She wanted to be treated well. Bounce back. So when we talk about what's going on in the cybersecurity world, we say, well, this is exactly what we're doing. We're going to tell people, hey, this kind of ransomware is out there, and you should embrace it and take it into your being and believe it and apply that in your regular life. But here's the thing. What if, in that hospital setting, just one member of that clinical team, one of those doctors had said, you know what, I'm too busy doing real work. Seriously, I don't have time for this. I'm not going to that class. Or they said, all right, I'll go to the class, but this is a big waste of my time. I'm not paying attention. Or, you know what, I'm going to listen, but this presenter's got no credibility for me. I don't believe a word they say. If any of those things had happened, this would have had a terrible outcome. And that's exactly what we're fighting right now that we're in pandemic year 3, when we are trying to teach people how to avoid making the kind of catastrophic but completely unintentional security behavior mistakes that lead to a breach or an exploitation. Because, and this is what I think is critical about this, an ER doc and a cardiologist and a cardiac surgeon, their job is to save lives. So when someone tells them of a new way to save lives in difficult circumstances, they were already intellectually and emotionally invested. Thank God for that. But when we go talk, imagine if we'd gone in and talked to them about ransomware instead of SCADs. They might have thought, well, yeah, this isn't my job. This is someone else's job. I've got better things to do. I save people. You fix computers with the clickety bleep thing. And they're not wrong. This is what we're actually up against. We have users that are fatigued, that are stressed. They don't have enough bandwidth to focus on anything other than life maintenance, staying alive, and their core function. So when we come in as security people trying to convince them, you need to listen to this. This is very important information that will help the entire organization. A lot of times they just don't listen. They're not bad. They're not stupid. They're not wrong. They're just out of resources. And this is where we have to build, I feel, that institutional credibility and make that emotional connection to where people want to actually listen to what we have to say and are more willing to take it seriously than just being another administrative annoyance. We also have to do other things like you get past their cognitive biases and their logical fallacies, the kind of stuff that I write about a lot over on BR with my monthly tease column. I think Jeff just put up one of my recent columns from December.
Yeah, Jeff's putting up in the chat at the moment. Jeff is standing in for our Tice Elf just for a little while today. Just links to Kyle's excellent comments over in the chat. Links to all the columns where Kyle talks about this topic all the time. But yeah, I think that's so true. I think it's that bandwidth. And I think what with the conflict and everything coming out in Ukraine now, I think it's just a lot of people are just so full of news and full of events. And I think I seem to remember, Carl, the last time you were on the show talking to me anyway, that we were hoping for a quieter 2022, which we're not getting. And then on top of everything else, as you say, we're trying to get people to absorb some cybersecurity training, which is why, of course, it matters that it's an ongoing thing. Well, I'm very pleased to hear that your missus is doing well now and that they've had that training. And what a brilliant story and a brilliant point to make, as always. Such a brilliant opening guest. Stay with...
I swear she did not have the SCAD just to give me a good story for this webinar.
But but it worked out that she did anyway. So that is really brilliant. Well, listen, as I say, always a great guest. Stay with us, Kyle, whilst we carry on this discussion and talk a little bit more about that way sort of ability of humans to make mistakes and so on going forward. You will have seen, everybody, there are some links to the Dark Reading article, which is today's news item, which I'm going to move on to now, going up in the chat. And I'd like to welcome to the show the rest of my panel for today's teissTalk, including Robert Fleming from Ziver, who are today's sponsors, and also to Bernard from, and I always have to check back on it, from Vivid Money Island. And Bernard, I'm not even going to attempt.
Bernard's surname is good to know.
See,
there you go.
There's no way I'd have got that right, and it just feels so bad.
You were very close. Any attempt that doesn't sound like Schwarzenegger, I accept as good attempt. So.
Well, listen, welcome back to the show, Bernard, and welcome for the first time, Robert. It's so great to have both of you here. Bernard, we are expecting lots of cats in the background.
I don't actually know. There's no cats in this room today, and the doors are closed.
I'm devastated. So last time, some of you may remember that Bernard's cat stole the show in the background last time. But welcome to the show.
Yeah, today. They always do that. That's why I closed the doors this time.
We love it, though.
No. I can't have that. I can't have that.
So let's talk a little bit first of all about this news item that we have flashed up in the chat. And what we're talking about is obviously we've got this ongoing situation in Ukraine. And so really it would be remiss of us not to talk about this just a little bit, because obviously people are concerned, businesses are concerned. We know a lot of you who are listening to the show are CISOs or senior security people, or indeed any level security folk, and are probably wondering what the best thing to do in terms of preparation, and in terms, I think, as well, of what you say to your people when they ask, what are the cyber implications of this? Let's give Kyle a rest just for a little while. There's the article there. It's a dark reading article, and it's 7 steps to take right now to prepare for cyber attacks by Russia. Let's go to Robert Fleming first. Robert, I mean, you've looked at this article. What's your view and generally of this whole situation? Welcome to the show. What's your view?
Thanks a lot. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Yeah, obviously this is very topical situation that we're in right now, and what I'd say is a lot of the threats that are out there are threats that are existing day to day before this news article has come up and before the current circumstance we're in with Ukraine and Russia and so on. And so I think there's some really good advice in the article about things to be aware of. One thing I would call out, just in the interest of time and picking kind of one piece of the article, is it's not just about people hacking into your network. It's about being sure about the level of encryption and integrity of the communications that you're sending to stop them getting intercepted and attacked as things are being sent around. So for us, we think it's very important that digital communications are inherently as secure as possible. That means clearly a lot of email that's being sent today is not inherently that secure. It's not been designed to be super secure. So be aware of that fact. Be clear that you're using technology, for example, to bulletproof that encrypted email that you're sending as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
For us, it means strong encryption. It means zero keys, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful about that. Zero access, user level authentication, these kind of things. There are things that are obviously not just technology related as well, which is about having a culture and a heightened culture and awareness within the organization of being secure, particularly at this time, but again, any other time, frankly. And that needs to, I think we may talk about this later as well, this needs to come from the top down as well. So for us, it's about the technology piece, making sure you're bulletproof in the communications that you're sending day to day, and also making sure that you have a culture driven from the top down that's as security aware as possible. And it's just a good reminder in the article that we have to be doubly vigilant at this point in time, given what's happening and the potential heightened threat of cyber attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming to Bernard next. I mean, what Robert says is true, Bernard. I mean, the article talks about making sure that the basics are in place, but also really understanding what your exposure is. Not everyone has the same level of risk, right?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Robert saying that, I would change that article title to just 7 steps to take right now to prepare for cyber attacks. Yes. Because it's like, it's irrelevant who's attacking at that stage. And, let's face it, organizations, financial organization and individuals are exposed to the cyber attacks for as long as we have cyber.
Yes.
And it doesn't, like our current situation, as bad as it is, it doesn't change that. I mean, there's not going to be this, it's suddenly not changing that, hey, 2 weeks ago we were safer and the world was not exposed to cyber attacks, and suddenly today we are. It's not true. We just, it's never ending story, let's face it. And, my biggest thing, as I said before, and I always say that my biggest problem with cybersecurity is that society just doesn't care. And this is the biggest problem. I see that all the time. I get new people to this organization or previous organization. They are about 19, 20, and by that time it is not like they don't care because because they are 20. It's just they don't care because they were never educated about it. And my biggest problem with the cyber is that we're moving with almost speed of light when it comes to cyber stuff. With the internet, especially the pandemic, we put so many services went online and went over the internet, but our education never started. Actually, I'm not saying it's not going after, but it never did really took off. And the problem is we have like 6, 7, 8-year-old kids who are pretty good with devices at the moment, but we don't teach them anything about security, hygiene, about being safe, about privacy. We just say, yeah, play with stuff, see what happens. And then they are 20 and they're like, yeah, I play with the computer for like 16 years. This old guy with beard is sitting saying telling me about security. I know more and I know better. And unfortunately, that is the biggest problem from my point of view. So the steps, they are great steps for sure, but it doesn't they are to be taken right now, last week, last month, last year, and 5 years ago. And they are also to be taken next week and in 5 years. Really.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm hearing you say that, I can see Kyle nodding, because what you're saying, I know that Kyle at OCC has gone over all those things with his people, and it's things that can, these are real concerns, Kyle, is that, first of all, that these things should be in place anyway, as both of the others have said, but also it sort of relates back to that original piece that you mentioned, isn't it? That people just aren't aware of it, and they aren't necessarily, like Bernard said, they don't necessarily care. That's our fight, isn't it?
See, like I tell you, if I can say something.
Yeah, sure. Then I'll come to Kyle.
I give you a great example of what happened in Ireland a year ago.
Okay.
So, as you are or not aware, HSC, so Health Service Executive, going back to health scare in Kyle said, was attacked by ransomware. Okay. It was a silly story. I mean, there's lots of problems with that because they were using Windows 7. Nothing was patched for years. The cyber criminal organization that actually attacked HSE, I think the dwell time was about 3 to 4 weeks before they did anything, and no one spotted anything. So bad stuff. The problem, what happened, but that's not the point. The point is what happened after. So for a month, maybe month and a half, when this thing went public, it was all over the news. I mean, every news station, every online paper, everyone was talking about that. And for about a month and a half, everyone was interested in security. For about a month and a half, if you were selling services, you were just selling. Like you could just call into any organization, hey, I'm selling cyber, doesn't mind, we're buying. I don't care what you're selling, we're buying. Everyone was super interested. After a month and a half, maybe 2 months, some news story broke on the news, everyone forgot about it. And literally the interest went from we'll buy anything and you can spend all money you want as a CISO to do we really need this? That was 2 months ago. This is all news. Do we really need this EDR thing or this XDR thingy? Why are we spending money? It's expensive. Absolutely. It wasn't expensive month ago, but and that's what I'm seeing. Every time there's a big news item, organizations are, oh yeah, we're spending. And then story goes down, goes dark, we don't. And the same with the people's interest. People were interested for about 2 months. I was invited to give a talk to kids, to schools and everything. Quiet.
So let's
Nobody
go
cares anymore.
Okay, well, thank you, Bernard, because I think, like I say, I was going to bring Kyle in on this one because I think it's true. Kyle, I asked you to hold that thought because what Bernard's saying is right, isn't it? That the news comes and goes, but interest ebbs and flows, and we're kind of stuck with all of this.
You're absolutely right. So one of the most important rules we try and teach new people in the security awareness space is one of the foundational quotes from Perry Carpenter's book, Transformational Security Awareness. If you don't have it, get yourself a copy because it's fantastic. But the lines he keeps repeating throughout is, you can make me aware. You cannot make me care. And that's the trick. When building on what Robert and Bernard are talking about, your security culture is what determines whether or not people are going to do the basics reliably, consistently, and correctly. And when there's a major cyber attack in the news, people get interested. And then their attention fades to whatever the next major crisis is. What we have to find a way to do if we want to stop people from becoming non-malicious, unintentional insider threats is we got to make it fair. And per Robert's point, that's where we absolutely need to have cultural reinforcement of behaviors, values, and standards. That is, leaders have to lead by example and show people this is how we do things, this is why, and this is why it's important for everyone to take this seriously. If you don't have that, your culture is one of comply when the boss is looking or when the auditors come around, and the rest of the time do what you want because it doesn't matter. And that's where your mistake is going to come from.
Well, let's go to Robert for a second, because I think that's why, I guess, Rob, that we need to work with the people as well as tech, don't we? We need the technology to do sort of some of the heavy work here, don't we? Because people get fatigued, and because people forget, and because cultures vary, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really a combination of the two. I mean, often when this kind of topic's been discussed, I've noticed that often the answers tend to be about user awareness training. But if we're really honest about it, there's security user awareness training been happening, constantly in many organizations, and yet data leaks are on the rise. I mean, for example, in the UK alone, last year, independent survey showed data leaks were around 14,000 data leaks. And over half of those were human error related. In fact, nearly 80%. So not the hackers, not the ransomware and everything, but human error. So to say that it's just about like culture and training is clearly not working. So there needs to be a yin and yang here. It's like Kirk and Spock, because they're kind of the two together is basically what needs to happen. In our view, and the customers we work with, we have over 5,000 organizations using our technology today, and to prevent data leaks and so on. What they tell us is it needs to be a combination of smart technology to help people, empower them to be secure, to do that heavy lifting, as you say, Jenny, a couple with the cultural piece that we've all been talking about as well. So it's the two together. It's what's really important. But just to abjectly kind of say, it's just culture and it's just about user awareness training. Let's be really honest about that. For many organizations today, particularly for a topic such as security, which is a complex topic, which is not the forefront of every staff member's mind in many organizations, to beat them over the head and say, you've got to take this training and be security aware, is clearly not working. So it has to be a combination of technology that's smart, that can help prevent errors before errors are made, or when things have been sent, help correct them, and this cultural piece. So I think it's a combination of the two pieces, and that's what we're seeing with the companies we're helping today.
I agree, and I don't think that we can hit people over the head and get them to do almost anything. I mean, I remember people won't even wear seatbelts if you just tell them they have to. You have to convince them of the argument. And I know Kyle will be smiling away, and agreeing with me here. Just to go to the chat for a minute, I've got limited visibility of chat today, but I do see that Benjamin has said that his CEO is bound to blame the Russians for being socially engineered. And again, this is this. It may be, it may not be, but it's why we need, because human error exists, and because because people do make mistakes. To get to our topic today, people will make mistakes. It's very important that we try and limit the amount of judgment calls they have to make, I guess, and tech helps with that. But you cannot just tell people what to do and expect them to just do it. We know that doesn't work. Let's have a little let's have a think about today's title, because it was protecting people from their own mistakes. Let's go to Carvers. I find that quite problematic, but just the idea of saying protecting you from your own mistakes almost puts you on the back foot straight away with winning hearts and minds, Kyle.
I kind of disagree with that, and here's why. One of the key messages I think that needs to be delivered to people is that we're all going to make mistakes. Like, one thing to teach, whether I'm teaching corporate workers or Boy Scouts or whomever, is that everyone's going to fall for a fish eventually.
Yes.
No matter how skilled you are, a good enough fish is always going to win. That doesn't mean you just give up and stop doing your best. It means you have to recognize that you are in many ways a victim of your own brain circumstances. You're supposed to do the best as often as you can and understand how to do it. That's one of the reasons I feel it's very important that security organizations should, number one, not be a part of the disciplinary process. right? You're not the bad guy to get someone fired. You are there to help train people, empower people, and directly support them to help them avoid making mistakes, preventable mistakes, if at all possible. The idea being that when you call security, it's because security is going to come and help you as a trusted partner and friend, not come harass you or surveil you like some sort of secret police.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we have Mark in the chat putting Sting song, The Russians, and that music video was kind of about that. We don't want to be a version of that kind of Cold War, keeping an eye on everybody, obviously, Mark. But I know why there's certain songs going through everybody's heads at the moment. I mean, I guess. So I suppose what we really need to think about now is is there anything else we can do in terms of putting people's minds at rest and stopping some of these mistakes happening because of the overload and everything else? Is there any way that we can do that? Perhaps what I'm thinking is the role of, we spoke a little bit about the tech, we speak a little bit about automation. Is that where the answer lies? Our article today spoke about lots of different things. In particular, it spoke about things like watching your B2B VPNs and things like that, which these are things that, like we said before, should be done, but maybe people are forgetting. So what sort of tips do we have? What sort of things should we not be missing? Let's go to Bernard, maybe.
I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, we can't miss anything. Now, I just kind of will take a step back if you allow me. And I think one of the problems with the awareness is the fact that lots of organizations is doing it for the compliance sake. Like, you need to be compliant, you need to deliver X amount of hours of training a year. And, I think, I don't know if I used it on our previous talks, but I have this analogy always that I use when it comes to those trainings. It's like, it's like building a housing estate next to the motorway and never tell kids anything about cars. And by the time they turn 20, tell about 20 kids to cross the motorway and just give them a PowerPoint with 12 points about cars. And then be surprised that half of them died. It's like, what happened? They looked at the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
It's the same with security training. If we do 12 slides every once a year, it's not a security training. It's not an awareness training. It's literally an exercise in checking the box checking exercise.
Well, that's what Grant has said in the chat there. He said that training is one aspect, but influencing behavior is a completely different challenge, which I think picks up on what Kyle was saying as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's like, I find it a completely difficult, totally a horribly difficult thing to do, because there's only so much tech you can throw on things, right? There's only so much policies and procedures you can try to enforce. And there's this whole aspect that people need to kind of, stop, think, and do things. It's like, I'm a scuba diver. It's like a scuba diving. If you do something crazy in the mine or flooded cave, you need to be calm. You need to stop, think, and then, reevaluate, reassess where you are. And we need to, and I don't know, I don't have an actual answer for that. I wish I did, because, I'd be probably moving to Mars now or something like that with all the money I would make from that if I had that type of solution. But I think it has to start with education, but it has to start with education at early age. I mean, seriously, we need to figure it out how to bring cybersecurity, privacy, cyber hygiene to schools. Really, we need to, it needs to be part of curriculum. If we want to really think, really be living in a safe world, which is never going to be safe. But right now, it's just ridiculous what's happening. I mean, as I said, I'm in an organization. I'm talking to people. I'm giving talks, and most people genuinely don't care. And that's the problem. It's not like they are not trained or not educated enough. They just genuinely don't care. The answer, I very often hear an answer like, yeah, it's just my data. I mean, I don't have anything to hide. Why would I worry that I get phished? Why would I worry about something? And I was giving a talk once, and it was about phishing and social engineering, basic stuff. And someone, and people were like, this has never happened. I never heard about anything. But one of the person on the audience said, actually, you know what? I know an example of something that happened here in Ireland. My friend, or that person's friend, was sending him money for deposit for his house to his solicitor, and he got an email from the solicitor saying, "Hey, my account has changed. Send it there."
Yeah.
And he obviously sent it to the new account and lost about 20 or 30,000 euro. And that was the moment when lots of people shifted. You could see down the audience, they was like, "Oh shit!" moment. It was like, "Oh, this is not some training that I receive in work. This actually can happen to me outside of work." Because lots of people I talk to, they think, "Oh, phishing, social engineering, that's for my work stuff. I don't have to be worried about my home stuff."
Excellent. Kyle, you wanted to come in, I think.
I do. Bernard made an excellent point. And this is something I think that people could actually learn from the way we do things in Texas. This is a callback to the last time I was actually in London for one of the live Tees conferences. But one of the things that people tend to do when they make a terrible mistake, like sending 20 euros to a scammer, is they feel embarrassed. They don't want to talk about it. They can't make it. They can't go back and undo it. But to admit to others, this is humiliating. It makes me look really bad. I don't want anyone to know. The trouble is that attitude doesn't help anyone else learn from the experience. Whereas a factor of Texan culture, whether you like it or don't, is that we tend to approach embarrassing mistakes the opposite of sane people. So like if you see a Texan thrown off his horse for literally anything else, instead of trying to dust himself off, get a stiff upper lip, and walk away like it didn't happen, say, "Hey, you see that? That was dumb as hell. Come here." And it is that openness, that willingness to share with everyone the embarrassing details about a mistake you made that helps others avoid making the same mistake. So, per Bernard's example, we need to encourage people to share those mistakes. So, yeah, I did this. I did this thing wrong. Here's what happened. And make it more personal and emotionally resonant for people. Especially, it's going to be more effective when it comes from people who aren't grumpy old technical security people that are lecturing, but one of their own saying, "Hey, I wish I had done this better. Here's what I could have done differently. You can do it better too." That kind of open dialogue is going to have a far better and longer lasting impact on people's individual and collective behavior.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that idea of, what you said, you think that makes saying, though, we do make mistakes. And when we make a mistake, this is discussing it is an excellent way of putting it. We've got some great comments in the chat. We've got Mark saying, if tech can be used to prompt people about near misses as closely to the event with some education and pointers, that might help make the message stick, make the training useful to protect people's lives outside work. Also helps the message stick. We have mentioned a few other things. I'm just going to come to Robert now. We've spoken about, the social engineering, the fishes and everything else, a sort of outside-in attacks. But we do know, we mentioned dwell time and other things. We do know that some of these things are going out as well, Robert. I mean, I think it's important, in the article, we say monitor those networks, monitor what's going out the organization as well, whether that be malicious or mistake. It's important to make sure we focus on both of these things, isn't it? I think we can get hysterical thinking about who's attacking us, but what about what's on our network?
Yeah, and it's a real threat, obviously, but that's where the headlines are. And yet when you look behind the headlines and you look at the media every week, and you actually read up on the detail, you find that, as I mentioned, 80% of the data leaks are caused by human error, so communication errors sent in, internally. So that could mean, for example, I'm sending you an email attachment of something that's private, and I'm not meant to have sent it to you. The problem is that we're not helping our staff to empowering them to be secure as they can be with our technology. And then the second part, as I mentioned, is there's an education piece as well. But as Mark said in the chat, I noticed it would be helpful to prompt people when they've made errors, and I think that's exactly the role of a smart technology solution as well. So imagine if I was about to send you some private information, Jenny. I'd never emailed you before, and then I'm sending you an attachment with financial data, whatever. What about if it prompts you before I send it to you that I've never communicated with you before, nor ever sent anything like this to you before, and actually warn me before I send it, to give me the opportunity to pull out that email. That's exactly what can be done now today with smart technology. The other point is then when you've made the mistake, I mean, I completely agree with the points made earlier about, like, you know, we're only human. Mistakes are made, even with, you know, smart technology and stuff. Some you may choose to ignore the warning and send something in error. But what about if after you send it, you can actually revoke access so that people can't read it? So that is possible today with smart tech as well.
See,
a lot
that
of email
to me is
don't
the
do
most.
that.
That is the most useful thing in the world, is to be able to go, oh, I've sent it, but you're not going to read it. To me, I would need that a lot of times. Even just personally, stop my mother-in-law sending something I should have sent to someone else, type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know,
So
I think that's going to save a lot of embarrassment
yeah,
professionally and
for us, the
personally.
way to think about it is 3 steps. One, before you send something, how you're being prompted that you shouldn't be sending this to this person because they're not a trusted individual. You're never behaviorally sent this financial document to this person before. But oh, and by the way, the second time I send something like that to you, I'd like not to be bothered about that, because you know, it's learnt inherently that you are somebody who's trusted that I can send this information to. So smart technology can do that as well. But the first step's before you send. The second is when it's sent. Obviously, the transport layer security, whether whether the vendor is holding your decryption keys, etc., etc. Then the third, as I said, is then when it has been sent, whether you have the opportunity to revoke access to it. So that's what I'm saying about, like, it's time. Technology, we live in an era of smart houses, smart cars, smart fridges. It's about time we had smarter technology to help with some of these things, because it can help day to day, and it does. You just need to find the solution to help you do that. So
yeah, I think it's important that we do it. Clearly, the solution is tech. You know, in kind of in symbiosis. There's that word,
exactly.
Kyle. I said it in the rehearsal. Probably never say that. In symbiosis with our human element, obviously that's part of it. And just to conclude today, I just thought we'd go back to our main kind of topic onto the news items and just look at some of the things that we might be expecting, just very briefly. Just across my desk, what I'm seeing is lots of phishes and scams that are using the narrative of the conflict in Ukraine to sort of play with people's emotions. Just to come to Kyle on that one, because I know using that emotional content cloud, classic social engineering, you know, playing on people's good nature who want to, you know, I don't know, contribute to things. We need to be careful of phishing scams and fake news right now.
This is where I found my recommendation to people in the community has been, we can't just say, hey, with Russia invading Ukraine, there's going to be an increase in cyber threats, because anything increase in cyber threats. But the way you said it, I like that a lot. That's what I agree with. You have to actually teach people to start breaking it down. Sure, there's fish that are going to capitalize on the emotional impact, right? That emotional call to action that gets you to click something in an email. There's charity scams. There's also people that are they're recycling old footage just to make it seem like they've got news, to satisfy people's endless appetite, and they're trading it for clicks and likes. But there's also misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, and being able to tell those apart and understand why, when, and how they're used, right, by all sides of the conflict, including the bystanders, will help people get a better idea of the psychology and the desire of the attacker. And the more they learn about it from the attacker's perspective, the more they can then start to subconsciously pick up on the clues that give away, you know, a fish, a vish, a smish, a social engineering call, all those different ways that they might be tricked, right? And that's going to not only give them a greater sense of empowerment over their ability to protect themselves, it's also going to make them sharper in being able to parse what they're receiving or what they're consuming on social media and begin to see through the narratives that are being presented.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we need to think about. We need to think about that education and those warnings that Robert just spoke about in the tech popping up in work. Maybe that makes us think twice at home when perhaps we don't have that same level of protection.
Absolutely.
Just finally, just to Bernard very quickly, I see that the Conti ransomware gang has come out in support of Russia and the Russian government. So we're just going to say, just to people, obviously make sure ransomware plans are in place, and that, you know, I mean, I was told this morning by one client they're assuming compromise and just behaving that way. What would your, very quickly, Bernard, because we're just about out of time, what would your thoughts be just on that, just quickly to finish?
I mean, it's the same as always, I think, in my opinion. I mean, you need to be ready always.
Yeah.
It's regardless what's happening in the world. Let's face it, like all that ransomware or all the other social engineering, phishing, whatever you want to call it, it's nothing more than the crime of opportunity. And because we are on the internet all the time, there's lots of opportunities. And current affairs, whatever they are, they just create more opportunities, and they create, they cause people to be less careful, I guess.
Yeah,
and that's it. But we need to be always ready, because it's a numbers game, right? You send email to 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 1 million people, or 1 billion people, whatever. I mean, everybody's email address is out there, right? So you just send an email, and somebody will click on something. Just opportunity. And as an organization, as a security people, as security professionals, we just need to always think, this is going to happen, and we need to train people and explain to them, and make sure that people at least think when they're clicking something on the in their email. Or we just ban all emails,
or just ban it all, and let's all just give up. Of course, that's not the advice. Well, I just want to say thank you to my fantastic panel today, to Kyle Hubert, Robert Fleming, and to Bernard, whose second name I'm still not going to try.
It's still good.
You're saying to me, it's still the same, Jen, and I still am going to butcher it. I also want to say thanks to today's episode sponsors, Ziver. Thanks to Ziver and to our fabulous teissTalk audience who have been commenting in the chat. I don't have a mug to hold up today, but I think our most engaged audience member, and we have a couple that a couple of contenders for that. We had, let me see, we had Chun and we had Benjamin, but I think today I'm going to award that mug to Mark for lots of advice, and including a soundtrack to today's events and to the recent events as well. So that goes to Mark. Congratulations to you. Don't forget to join Jeff White on Thursday of this week at 4 p.m. London time, and he's going to be talking about where are we and what comes next, which is suitably vague for very precise times. I just want to say thank you to everybody for today's show. I've been Jenny, and we'll see you again very soon on the next episode of teissTalk. Goodbye.